Jess DaMassa. Wait, what?
Coverage.
Where's Jim Joyce?
Jim Joyce.
Where's
oh my
Jim
God.
Joyce?
Is this a takeover episode?
It is a takeover.
Jim? Am I the Jim now?
Listen, Jim, apologies that I'm cheating on you with Jess.
All right.
But hopefully this is a pleasant surprise as Jim and I skipped last week. I was flying here and craziness. He was flying all over the place. And this week, my flight is also at the same time we usually recorded. So this was a perfect opportunity to do a Jess DaMassa takeover of Jim. And we're doing this.
Oh my God, seriously.
Wave, wave, wave. And then our guest is, you will see.
And this poor guy in between us, like seriously, who's he? Who's he talking to?
Can we zoom in? Can we zoom in? Can we zoom in?
No. No. But yeah, like if you're on the phone with him doing a deal.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. But this is all we're at the Westin. This feels very JPM like. This is around HLTH Health Conference, which was a blast to see everybody. Lots of selfies, lots of great talks. Any highlights before we let our guest in from you, Jess?
Well, everybody's been talking about two things. Number one, the CEO of Forward on a panel went at Rushika Fernandopulle, or however you say his last name, from Iora, which got acquired by One Medical, and was like a total jerk on stage. And the thing about this I think is really interesting. So basically he long story short, said that Iora and One Medical were a bunch of crooks. And it was nasty and he wouldn't stop. It was like a relentless, every time he got to speak, he went back at Rushika, One Medical, Iora. So it was really
I'm actually gonna, I didn't see that session, but I'm actually gonna watch it. And I think there's a way to be, let's call it boisterous and challenging and pushing forward, pun intended, but there's also being kind of rude about it, right?
I mean, choose the way you want to deliver your message. I mean, and I don't feel like there's anything for that. And the thing that I think is really short-sighted, to be honest, is like a PR kind of professional is nobody knows this guy's name, but everybody's saying the CEO of Forward. So I really feel like he's hurt the company brand as opposed to his own personal brand. You know what I mean? He just came off like a jerk. Everybody's got a negative connotation of Forward.
We'll look him up in the fun mentions. We'll see what he responds to, if anything. But anyway, I know also I was trying to make it to the Glen, Tullman and Jonathan Bush. So talk about, pushing forward and pushing the envelope, but still being very, I don't know, he'll fill in the words, but very, very nice about it at the end of the day, right? Like collegiate.
Yeah, so the two of them, they had only been on stage together one other time at Health 2.0 years ago, and it was Matthew who had them, and they weren't actually on stage physically together. Glenn was on a screen, like a giant head above the stage, and Jonathan was on the stage. So this was truly epic in the sense that those two guys were sitting next to each other, but they had nothing but great things to say about each other. It was really it was fun to watch. It was they were very entertaining.
So next, this was a great place to see literally hundreds and hundreds of people that we haven't seen, and all the receptions and all of that. It felt kind of back. And I have to say to the organizers of Health, kudos on pulling this together. Honestly, even with the rapid testing, right? I mean, they've invested a lot. Granted, the conference is not cheap and lots of sponsors, but still it's an investment. And I think kudos to everyone, just really honoring the mask wearing inside and all of that. So pull it off. And we're off next. So I'm actually in Dublin for Health Excel next week. I'm looking forward to the Dublin crew and some of the usual suspects. And then you and I will see each other in Milan for Frontiers.
Milan, yeah, Frontiers. I can't wait. I missed Frontiers last year. I was virtual, but it's not the same.
No, exactly.
I'm so excited to be back in Europe. That'll be awesome. See the team.
Fantastic.
It'll be fun. Super excited.
All right, so we have our guest waiting. We're gonna let him in, and we will actually upload the picture later because we're all doing this.
But it's not. Spoiler alert.
I feel like walking over. Murray, welcome. Murray Brozinsky.
Gentlemen, please welcome Murray Bronkowski.
Brozinsky. Did I say that? Oh, look at that. There's a guy behind you. So at one point, while you're doing your introduction for millions of viewers and listeners, I'm going to walk over and show our audience where you are in this hotel. But I also heard, before you go into that description, you're a producer of Broadway. Kick us off with that or something. There's a story behind there, isn't there?
You know, first of all, it's great to be here in person on Zoom with you, whatever that means. But
Yes.
forward to the shot. So, yeah, this actually Jessica told me this at the UCSF Health Awards, that I'm a Tony Award-winning Broadway producer. I love this meme. I don't know that I want to disabuse anybody of it, but I am a playwright, and I did have a number of plays produced in New York, and one fairly recently won a festival, but it's a short one-act play festival Off-Broadway, but now it's become somehow a Tony Award-winning musical. So I'm going to let it keep.
Oh, so
Right,
it is
you're telling
true.
people you were like a producer in Cats, like one of the originals.
I don't know the cast would be a compliment, but well, actually the play would, not the movie. That's true. But yeah, so part of it's true. So Eugene, the playwright and the award-winning play is true. It's not a Tony Award-winning musical. It's not an Oscar Award-winning film, which maybe will come next. But so there's some truth.
I like the high aspirations, but let's rewind back. Take us a little bit through who Murray is for our viewers and listeners. Your background, how did you get to where you are, and then we'll get into some of the juicier stuff.
Great. I think actually the play is a good start, because I kind of think of myself as much as possible as a creator. And, you know, I take ideas and try to figure out what's the best way to bring them to life. And some ideas should be stories and plays and art, and some really should manifest themselves through businesses. So being an entrepreneur to me is a creative endeavor, and I've been doing that for roughly 2 decades, since 2005 in healthcare and digital health, which I think increasingly is just healthcare. And so Conversa is my 4th company in the digital health space. I started out as part of the founding team of Healthline, which is now the largest health destination site for consumers or for health education. One of the most trusted sites. We sold that company in 2000. So it was an overnight success. 2005, 2016. We sold it to.
Aren't they all?
Aren't they all? We sold it to Summit Partners. And then subsequently, a couple of years later, I wasn't involved, but then it got sold again to Red Ventures. And so it's been doing great, really proud of that company. And we had a lot of technology in that company that was really being underutilized, because it's really a media company. And so we spun the technology out. And I was part of the founding team of Talix, which is the company we created out of that technology in 2016. And we were kind of really good technology in search of a problem to solve. And we kind of looked at a bunch of different problems. And I was chief strategy officer, so came up with the idea of risk adjustment. And we created risk adjustment software we sold to risk-bearing entities, mostly payers, and outsourced risk adjustment companies that worked for payers. So the whole idea was, how do you go through or help medical coders more effectively go through patient records using some natural language processing and some workflow, so they can go through more quickly, but keep the accuracy as high as it needed to be to do HCC coding for Medicare and Medicaid. And that company was recently sold, actually sold a couple months ago to a company called Edifex, which is a big player in that space. So that was exciting.
Murray, just a quick comment. It's like almost like an oxymoron to have in the same sentence, you know, risk adjustment and off-Broadway play. I don't know. It just doesn't fit together somehow, but you connect the dots, right? That's your creativity.
Well, yeah, you know, to have a career in writing off-Broadway plays is too risky. So I had to adjust it and get into
There you go.
Diversification.
Actually, the play is about a risk adjuster living off Broadway.
I'm always in search of ideas for new plays. Yeah, so that was super exciting. And then I left Talix with an idea to start a company. You know, started to really think about leveraging intelligence more and more as data became more liquid, and you can really put it in service of patients. I wanted to move closer to patients, and I had conceived of a company that was going to be sort of an AI extension to primary care, similar to what Bright MD and Bowie Health and those guys are kind of doing.
Yeah.
And for various reasons, I actually raised a bunch of money and had a team and a development partner in one of the large health systems. And the market had changed, and I pulled the plug on it and gave all the money back. It was actually a very interesting process to go through. All the investors said, we haven't seen this before. And so it was a tough decision.
Let's double click on that one. That one is interesting. Let's go deeper. Let's go deeper, man. Come on.
So it was a great idea, great team, and a lot of interest in the market, but certain fundamentals had changed, and I thought this is going to be a slog. I don't know that it's going to get. I don't know if it's going to move the needle on healthcare as much as it should. And part of it was because the market was changing so rapidly. We all know now what happened with COVID. This was prior to that, but you can start to see the tea leaves. And I just thought there were better ideas out there. And it happened through the process of putting together the plan and going out for the funding. So it was unfortunate to pull the plug that late in the game. Obviously, it was a very high integrity move. So all the investors were like, look, great to do this now, then find out later that, this doesn't have the legs you thought it did. No. So ultimately, looking back on it, it was a great experience. It got me very, very focused on the space. And I, way back when I was at Healthline, very close colleagues and friends with Wes Schell and Phil Marshall, who were the founders of Conversa. And so back then, Wes left Healthline and Phil left WebMD. Phil was consulting for us at Healthline, and this notion of digital dialogues that Phil came up with, we were brainstorming back in 2012, 13 back then. And then when they left to start the company, I was their first reference for their seed round, for example. So I was intimately involved. So dial forward, when I pulled the plug on this company in 2016, 17, they said, why don't you take everything you were thinking of doing, but do it in care management on the platform that we've conceived and come and run Conversa. So that actually led me, I knew them very well and I was intimate with it, but I had been looking at something very adjacent and I said, this is a good idea. And so I decided to join Conversa. We did a CEO transition a couple of years later, and the rest is history, which we'll talk about here, but it's been a rocket ship. And I think that was really the right product market fit at the right time in the market.
Before we dive into kind of what's the current thing, my question is, and I think we all had somewhat of fatigue on, the patient-physician communication and the chatbots and the messaging and all of that, right? And then you got companies like Babylon, Medictor. I mean, keep going. What was kind of the aha, or the big idea? And I guess let's call it success, right? I mean, you guys just sold, so as well, and the impact to the patient. So how does that differentiate you guys across other players? And what was the big aha and idea moment?
Yeah, I think the idea initially was light check-ins with patients in between visits, and then we looked at that and said, that's nice. It's a great idea. It's a great kernel to build on, but you gotta drive outcomes in healthcare. If you're not driving outcomes, then all is for naught. And there are some other great companies, you mentioned them. So like Babylon and Medictor, the demarcation between what they do, and the world's changing. People are moving out of their positions, but we work with patients who are known to the health system. Whereas most of those others, a lot of the money has gone into the notion of doing a differential digitally for an anonymous person. So it's virtual urgent care. It's somebody presenting with symptoms, trying to do a better job than a static symptom checker, and then you triage where they should go next. That's the model, typically. That's not our model at all. In fact, it's very complementary to what we do. We enroll a patient in a program on behalf of a doctor or a care team. So we know that you're a heart failure patient or a diabetes patient or living with diabetes and hypertension, or you're pregnant and you have a high-risk pregnancy. And then we integrate deeply with your record. So we now know all the personalized clinical information about you. So what medications you're taking, your allergies, your comorbidities, your family history. And then when we reach out in an automated way and we interact with you, it's personalized. It's asking you evidence-based questions for the pathway you should be on at that point in time in your journey. But it can also personalize to your particular clinical situation. Then we go a step further and we personalize the way you engage as well, so we can keep you involved. And then what we're doing, so the chatbot piece of it is really just a user experience. Today it's chatbot, tomorrow it may be something different. But the key part of this is we're engaging you so we can collect your wisdom, everything you know, combine it with what we know from the record, and then we can make a decision in real time as what the next best action should be for you. And it's the part that matters, right? And in many cases, that next best action can be done automated. It's you're nervous about something, we can allay your fears about a side effect you're having by providing some education. Or we see that you're trending the wrong way on blood pressure or depression, and we can nudge you back with some behavioral science to get you back on track. And then when we realize that there's a problem, earlier and earlier, we can intervene and get you connected with a synchronous care event that you actually need when you need it. So it's doing a lot of things at once. It's engaging the patient, way better experience. You're connected more frequently. We're getting ahead of problems that may happen in decompensation. We're lowering costs because all of this is being done without people on phone calls and unnecessary utilization of the health system. And we're then able to provide interventions and best next actions earlier, more accurately, which ultimately leads to measurable outcomes. But it's the measurable outcomes piece that I think separated us from the pack, because everything I just told you, people are like, that's great. Other people say they do something similar. Well, let's test it. And now we've been testing it for a number of years, and we've got large health systems that have gone all in as an relationship with us. So they're using this across chronic care management, post-acute and perioperative and women's health and now pediatrics and others because we're driving outcomes.
All right, Marie, I gotta know, because I had the opportunity to talk to both Ido and Roy about Amwell acquiring you, but I want to hear the flip side of it here on the shot. You know, what was it like who called you? And I'm going to resist doing like a Roy or Ido impression here because I cannot do the tonality of their voices justice. But like, who called? What did they say? Like, were you surprised?
Were you like,
did you know that they were looking at you?
You know who apparently could do those impersonations? Jonathan Bush, I heard, is very good at doing
Jonathan Bush on the conference that I hosted with Matthew Holt did a Roy impression that was seriously so spot on.
I need to watch that one.
Tell us, like, I want to hear, like, who called you? Did you even know they were looking at you?
Well, I love Ido and Roy, and of course I was very aware of them, but it's a small community and I had never met either of them previously. And I saw the consolidation happening even more quickly through COVID than we anticipated. And given that we're doing really well, very high growth company, very high margins, very good customers, really, really high net retention, meaning that we don't lose any customers and we're expanding considerably within them. So this is really working. But we're relatively early in our cycle and we're looking at these big companies putting together what the future virtual health platform might look like.
The front door.
The front door. I want to ask about that too.
Well, as Jess knows, I call it virtual any door. And then more than that, it's like, who cares? Once you walk in the door, then what? So we go very deep in navigating the patients to where they need to be, as we just talked about. But we recognize that even our health systems want to work with fewer and fewer partners, right? It's hard to manage all these different digital partners. And so we had to either raise a lot of money and start building the platform of the future or become part of one. And had we been later in the cycle, we probably would have gone the fundraising route, but I don't think we raised enough money given how quickly these platforms are growing, just because of where we are in the cycle. And so we were fortunate because we were doing well. We had a lot of inbound interest in the company, and we started having conversations. And my bar initially was, we don't want to talk to anybody who doesn't have a more compelling vision of the future than we have. That really locked a lot of people out because people would come in saying the same kinds of things that, mom and apple pie was nothing new and different and compelling. And one of our board advisors had a meeting with Amwell and said, you need to talk to Roy and Ido. And the thinking was partnership because they got a glimpse into the Converge platform that was recently launched. So I had a call with Roy and Ido, and we were very excited about what they were doing. They were excited about what we were doing. And so we went into a partnership discussion with their teams and our teams. And after about 5 of these discussions, I had a conversation with Roy one weekend, and we looked at each other on Zoom because we'd never met, by the way, and was concluded, which was such a weird thing. And we looked at each other and said, should we be talking about, a more permanent partnership? And we both, came to the conclusion at the same time. And it was such a good.
Oh my God, you dated, and then you became exclusive.
We dated.
I know they jumped straight to marriage. Really, I mean,
there were like 5 dates in between there. I mean, Murray met the whole family.
We had dates, and like a date, it came down to, we were aligned, our values and our strategy were aligned, but then we actually really felt we liked each other. The cultures were really akin. And so we said, we don't want to go through hiring a banker, go through a whole process unless we have to. So there's a fiduciary need to do that. If you're as interested in this as we are, let's skip that process if possible. And we did. We had a preemptive offer, we committed, and we got the deal done very, very quickly thereafter.
Awesome. Yeah, and even as they're a public company, that's kudos to getting a deal done quickly. So,
they announced that deal, your deal, at the same time as they announced Silver Cloud. Did you know about Silver Cloud, or was that existing in another place with another person in Amwell? Or did you know that was happening too?
We learned about Silver Cloud late in the process. There are, as a public company, there are disclosure and securities law and Amwell's super duper high integrity. So we learned it when we were able to learn about it.
Yeah.
We were very excited about it because one of the biggest demands that we get for programs is in behavior. First of all, we have behavioral and mental health in all of our programs because you can't do chronic care management without taking care of the head. You can't do really anything without that.
Yeah.
But standalone behavioral health programs, we built a COPE program with UCSF that was dealing with stress, anxiety, and PTSD for frontline healthcare workers. And on the heels of that, we started getting a lot of demand. As you know, there's more money going into that space than any other in digital health. So when we heard about Silver Cloud, we were thrilled because now we're cross-pollinating. I'm actually going out to Dublin next week to spend time with their team to really dig in.
How surprised were you at how tall Ken Cahill is when you met him in person? Is he not the tallest person you've ever met? He is so tall.
This is the deficiency of Zoom. I had no idea. And of course, you set your expectations, right? And I walked in the room and I looked and I was like, where's Ken? Oh.
He's like, seriously, what? Like 6'11"? He is like so tall.
Can we talk for like 30 seconds about this? The whole Zoom to real life. I was sitting here the day before yesterday, right downstairs by the Starbucks, and a gentleman knocks, Eugene, so great to see you. And I'm like kind of blanking out, takes the mask off the show. I'm like, I know him. This was Chris Burns, who was advisor to your coach, who we brought on board like 6-7 months ago. And I'm like, the only thing, I'm like, you look so much skinnier in real life. He's like, oh, I need to fix my Zoom camera then, right? So.
Wow.
Camera adds 10 pounds, right? That's what they say.
That's it. Yeah, that's for me.
Ken is tall, 6'9". Wonderful guy.
Yeah, so Ken is, he's a great guy.
What's next for Murray? Where are you guys on, like, as far as kind of the Amwell integration, and again, to the extent you can't talk about it, public company stuff brings, non-disclosures, but I'm curious where Murray's head is.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's public. So we're excited. By the way, the whole company is with Amwell, so everybody's committed to the future. We're excited. We're integrating the companies. And we're doing it in a thoughtful way. So the functions that actually will propel us forward and not, get in the way of the magic that we have. We have customers that obviously use telehealth solutions from competitors of Amwell. We are Switzerland in that regard, where we want to continue to work with those. Amwell is building the Converge platform to support anybody as well. So there's no constraints on who we can work with, and you're not compelled to have to use another Amwell service like telehealth, for example. We are, though, integrating our platform fully with the Converge platform. So if you want to take advantage of it, you can, by the end of the year and going into next year, a provider on the Amwell Converge platform, whether it's an Amwell provider supplementing your need if you're a payer or an employer, or it's a health system or practice's own physicians, they can have a telehealth visit. Let's say we're on right now, you could have a split screen, and then you can immediately prescribe a Conversa program. I can put you right there into a hypertension or diabetes program. All that data comes back. So on our next visit, I, as the provider, have all this information about you. If there are issues, you'll get escalated right back to me. So imagine virtual primary care. It's really going to be a game changer. It's what we envisioned, and we've built the system and the platform to be able to integrate with all these systems, and we still do that. But with Converge, it'll be pre-integrated, and so you can get a fully integrated telehealth, scheduling, EMR, right out of the box with automation.
All right, Marie, I want to hear your thoughts. So, like, the buzz phrase of, well, one of them of the year for me has been digital front door. Like, I feel like I've heard you were like digital any door, but I've heard digital side door, digital back door. I'm going to crawl out the digital window when I hear this stuff. But, like, what do you think about that whole phraseology? Like, I mean, do you think it's a bunch of BS? I mean, like, I feel like Conversa is like one of those companies that very much is put into that digital front door bucket. Digital any door bucket. What's your feedback on the digital front door phrase? I want to know what you think.
You know, I do use any door, but now that you're saying that, I'll unveil it here. I don't think the door at all, regardless of how many, is the right way to think about it. I think the way to think about it, so let's think about it personally, right? We're all patients, right? You want to be surrounded with care and be able to have this intelligence, know what you need when you need it. And by the way, if it gets it wrong or you want to initiate and say, I want to get my care in this particular way at this time, given where I am right now. So the need to go into a door makes no sense in that regard. And if I think about what we've done at Conversa, the whole idea of having an ongoing conversation, there's no need to go through any door, right? We're reaching out to you and saying, we're continuing the conversation we had yesterday. Here's what you told us yesterday. Here are some vitals from yesterday. Let's update it from today. And in real time, just say, you're doing great, keep doing that. Or you know what? You're a little bit off in your sugars. Have you thought about this activity or eating this differently? Or boy, they're really high. We're going to connect you with someone to talk to right now because it might be something more concerning. Or you think you have something concerning. Let's alleviate that stress. It's a common side effect that you're experiencing. Here are some things you can do to alleviate it. There are no doors involved in any of what I just talked about. So I think the door, you walk through the door, and then the next thing is like, what hallway do I need to go down? How do I get to the person? It's really not the
Oh, even before the door, I've talked to Matthew Holt about this. I'm like, am I supposed to then think of my health plan as the bouncer who's like carding me before I walk through the door? Like, who's got the keys to this door?
I'm on record at the shot that there are all these people doing digital front door, good for them. They're taking the physical model that you have to go somewhere, get out of your car, walk through a door, and putting it on a website. We're not that. We're with care when they need it and where they need it.
And Jess, please don't climb out of any windows.
No, right?
Please, we want you.
You gotta go.
So, you know, we're trying to keep this one short because I have a flight to catch as well. Jess, I'm gonna hand you to be the Jim with his famous last question of the show.
All right, Jim, I hope I do this justice, buddy. Whew, a lot of pressure. So, Murray, if you know, here you are now in your life doing what you're doing. If you were to look back at young Murray, the young entrepreneur, what advice would you give a young entrepreneur like yourself as you were coming up along the ranks? Did I ask it correctly?
Love it. Perfect. But let Jim be the judge.
Well, thank you for so graciously telling me that I'm old. I think that's what you just did. But
no, I often think what I would tell young Jessica, like even like Jessica 2 years ago, like what was she thinking?
Well, I don't know. I love Jim, but I don't know if Jim would tell me I'm old as graciously as you just did. So thank you.
My God, am I getting thrown under the bus here?
So I think there's so much advice, again, that's real mom and apple pie. It's like, yeah, thank you for telling me that. Here's something that I lived, I think the young entrepreneurs live, even older entrepreneurs live, is fear of failure. And you're always told, like, get over your fear of failure, overcome fear of failure, or you're not going to be successful as an entrepreneur. And I think that's hogwash. It's like a door. I would throw that out. I think you have to embrace fear of failure, and here's why. I actually think fear of failure is empathetic. If you don't fear that you're going to fail your customers, your team members and employees, your investors, you're going to lose their money, then something's wrong with you. Actually, you should go get checked out. Go talk to Ken, because I think that's empathetic, right? And I think you should embrace it, and I think you should learn from it, and I think you should get better because of it. I think don't make the same mistakes twice. But I think embracing fear of failure should be the driver, and trying to overcome it is just really the wrong approach.
Murray, for being such a young man, you're so wise.
What a lovely finish.
Thank you.
What a lovely finish. On this note, thank you, Murray, for joining us. And we're going to go and have a real shot.
A real shot. Look at this.
Shot of digital health.
There's Eugene right there.
I'm in a hallway.
Actually, yeah, stay there, Murray. I'm doing this. I'm coming to
Eugene
you.
to find Murray.
and then we're gonna.
We're on the move here now.
No, no.
On the move.
Let's do this. We'll do a triple fee, you guys. Triple.
There you go.
Triple shot here.
All right. Over and out, people.
Thank you, guys.